Tensions were high this fall at the University of Wyoming when the institution's commitment to diversity was questioned. Demands for greater understanding and inclusion by various groups were sparked by a case of what is feared to be racial profiling on campus. In this instance, 6 American Indian high school students were detained under the false suspicion of shoplifting. In response to bad PR, interim president Dick McGinnity held a diversity forum, but things didn't go as planned. One student group staged a walkout. Wyoming Signatures' Orlando Jacinto spoke to one of the leaders of Break ThrUWYO to gain their perspective.
How did Break ThrUWYO come about?
Break ThrUWYO is very complicated in that it's not just like this moment that just kind of transpired. It's really a historical precedence that has been building up really since the 60s, I would say, on this campus. And that is drawing a lot of motivation, not only for things that are happening on this campus now, but things that have historically happened on this campus. When we look back at the Black 14 and the response from the university with Matthew Shepard, and even the community and Wyoming-wide response for the Matthew Shepard incident, and just systemic problems that have been persisting since really the 60s when the DOJ, Department of Justice, really came into the university and mandated a lot of things to change in regards to multiculturalism and diversity, but like a lot of things haven't changed since then. And so Break ThrUWYO really takes its motivation through that. But more specifically this year, Break ThrUWYO is in response to a lot of systemic things that have been happening on this campus that have made marginalized communities and marginalized students feel unsafe and even unwelcome. When we look at organizations such as the Black Student Alliance and even MECHA, we have instances that community members or even students have made certain individuals within these organizations feel unwelcome and have spread hate and have spread disparaging comments and harassment towards these groups and towards a lot of other groups. I mean, when you look at LGBTQ students on this campus, they persistently are deemed negative, are called very derogatory terms on a constant basis. When you look at non-able-bodied individuals as well as people with cognitive disabilities as well, they are consistently harassed and disparaged here on this campus as well. So it's not just a race problem on this campus, that's definitely an issue, but it's really a systemic problem with marginalized communities being treated poorly here.
Break Through first presented their demands to the university at a public diversity forum that was held by President McGinnity. And the demands included individual town hall meetings with specific marginalized communities, a review by an external agency of the campus climate for marginalized communities, a detailed policy that addresses efforts for marginalized communities, and more direct input for the presidential search. Have any of these demands been met?
No, not directly, but we are in the process of implementing some of them with the president. We have been meeting with the president fairly consistently for the past 2 weeks since we got back from Thanksgiving break. And he is very willing to work with us, particularly with the town halls for individual marginalized communities. We have sat down with him and are kind of developing a strategy to implement those town halls and also what communities those town halls should be targeting. That's a great thing, and the good thing is that he's trying to coordinate a lot of these efforts directly with the initiative of the Diversity Strategic Planning Committee that he announced a couple weeks ago as well, and the creation of the diversity coordinator position within his executive council. So he's trying to streamline a lot of these initiatives together, and one of those first ones is these town hall meetings. So that's great. The other ones, unfortunately, we haven't had a lot of time to get into great detail with him, but he has assured us that he takes them very seriously and that he wants once the strategic planning committee is developed and implemented, he wants them to kind of take the head on those other initiatives and those other demands and kind of get the ball rolling on those.
Across the country, there is student-led movements that are demanding changes. And one commonality that you find among these demands is the need for faculty and staff to go through cultural competency training that teaches them how to interact with minorities. Why is this important? And why do you think it's a common?
I think it's common for a variety of different reasons. I think the primary reason is that traditionally institutions have been very white and have been very dominant cultured until really the 50s and the 60s, and that was only 50 years ago. So we look at historical precedents of a lot of institutions being around for nearly a century before that, and there's a lot of history that you have to overcome, and there's a lot of systemic issues and systemic oppression that you have to overcome in order to get faculty to a point where they have to be. So one issue is that there's just not a lot of marginalized faculty in general, particularly here at the University of Wyoming, and we have to make sure that we're allowing students and students across the nation of all ages to really be able to prepare themselves to get into faculty positions. But then when we're recruiting them, we have to be intentional about that recruitment. We have to make sure that the environment here is successful for them and that they're welcomed and that they're protected and that they're safe within and can succeed within this type of environment, which this university is not doing. And so we can't even attract the limited amount of marginalized individuals who are in faculty and in staff positions to this university because there is not the environment that supports them. But on a broader scale of why faculty don't already have this education is because they've never been required to have this education. Most colleges don't really teach broadly cultural competence, and it's not very required. Even when they do require it, it's kind of more cultural awareness rather than cultural competence and cultural relevancy and how to actually interact and welcome different cultures. It's more just learning, oh, this is what a culture looks like, not how do I interact with this culture, how do I welcome this culture into a different culture, and how do we balance two different cultures at the same time, or multiple cultures for that matter. So that's the main reason that people just don't know that they lack the education and they haven't been required to learn that education.
As you may know, Lori Nichols got selected for the presidency. How do you feel about this?
I think it's amazing. So Break THRUWYO, myself and the other leaders of Break THRUWYO have been very intentional about meeting all of the presidential candidates as they've been visiting the university over the past week and a half. And we have been going to their forums and asking them very pointed questions, particularly about multiculturalism and really marginalized communities on college campuses. And we asked them very hard questions, and we made them uncomfortable in a lot of instances, which is great. That's what we wanted to do. But from our perspective, Lori answered the questions the best. And her direct experience at South Dakota State really speaks to where this university is currently and her approach to these issues. She has specific experience working with Native American students in South Dakota and kind of coordinating an American Indian Resource Center there. And then also her approach right now, directly what she said is when you're dealing with marginalized communities, the first thing to do is to listen. And no other candidate said that. No other candidate really has that same approach or had that same approach. And we feel that that's the approach you have to have. We are not looking for somebody who necessarily has all the answers, because no one has all the answers. We don't have all the answers. Even the faculty and the staff on this campus who have answers don't have all of the answers. We're looking for somebody who can collect those answers and who can coordinate and collaborate with people who have answers in order to build a collaboration and kind of a community that works towards these issues. And you do that by listening. And you do that by talking to actual marginalized communities and not speaking for them. And she was the only candidate that directly said that she would do that. So we think she's going to be great, and we're happy to have her.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Yeah, thank you. It's exciting.